Crockett, who is one of the glad to talk with you today. We are doing a series on good neighboring and wanted to hear your perspective on some of what that means. And so I want to start out by asking you, just as an individual, what the concept of good neighboring means to you. What does it look like to be a good neighbor? And maybe how have you seen that in some of your work with CERT?
Yeah, to me, I define a good neighbor as someone who's compassionate, someone who's relationable, and someone who's interested in somebody else's needs above their own.
Mm.
And that's what we try to epitomize in CERT. And that's one of the reasons why we do what we do.
Yeah.
It goes beyond race, creed, and religion. It goes to the point as what Jesus tried to improvise to the religious leaders what a good neighbor or what a good Samaritan is. It's anyone that's in proximity of you.
Absolutely.
It has nothing to do with if you know them or not.
Right.
It could be a total stranger. It's someone who in that moment needs what you have.
Yeah.
And if we can demonstrate and use that example in our everyday life, I think that our community and the world will be a much better place.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. One of the things that we're using a book called The Art of Neighboring as part of something that we're reading during this time. And one of the examples that they talk about is meeting with the mayor of a city who basically said, if everybody would just be good neighbors, that would make a really big difference in our community. So tell me a little bit about some of the origins of how CERT was started and some of the things that maybe overlap with this topic that inspired you to begin that work.
I think, CERT started about probably, I guess, a couple months ago. About 7 or 8 months ago.
Yeah.
Because of the incident that happened downtown.
Mm-hmm.
And that was that two gentlemen got shot.
Mm-hmm.
and one got killed.
Mm-hmm.
And we believed that we needed to do something.
Right.
We needed to do something. And so we collectively brainstormed, planned, and put a team together of, if they could start off with 6 of us,
Yeah.
to go downtown to make downtown safe.
Yeah.
Granted, me and some other ones, we're not bar going individuals, and
Right.
we tend to go to sleep at 10 o'clock
Right.
at night, and
Right.
so we sacrifice our time on the weekends, Fridays, and on Saturdays, from 11 p.m. to 3 p.m.
Yeah.
for 4 months.
Mm.
And when we was down there for 4 months, we only seen one incident that happened.
Wow.
And that's because that we went down there because of compassion. It wasn't that yes, we knew the gentleman who got killed and the other gentleman who got shot, but majority of the people downtown, we didn't really know.
Right.
Right. But they was our neighbors.
Right.
And so being a good neighbor is that protecting your neighbors.
Absolutely.
And so that's pretty much that drove us to go downtown. From that, then we started getting requests to sports activities.
Yeah.
When things got a little unruly and stuff, from there we started to do acts to go to different apartments, different places. So our motto is that wherever the need is at,
Yeah.
that's where we go at.
That's really powerful.
And so that's how we started, and this is how we have evolved. And so you'll be able to see us all over the city because we're getting a bunch of requests. And so,
yeah. And I love the way that you described your ministry, really primarily of presence and relationship, right? And I think I've read a little bit about some of the ways that you all have worked in partnership with some of the professional law enforcement and officials in our area. But I think there's something really powerful around neighbors coming out driven by compassion for other neighbors to
Yeah.
want to be a presence. Can you say a little bit about that, why that might be needed in addition to whatever sort of professional folks that we have out?
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely correct that we do partner with, with Rochester Police Department, doing some stuff with the school district and I think the city and the county. I think that's important, but historically, there has been a disconnect, and not just with the system, but it's been a disconnect in our community and,
Right.
and a disconnect in our society.
Right.
Whereas that you can live next to someone today and never speak to them, never get to know, never get to know them. And I know that everybody's not a relational person, and I'm a relational person, right? And I understand that I can go to anybody and talk to anyone, but
Right.
not everybody's like that,
Right.
right? We tend to live in a society where there are silos and
Right.
different denominations across churches, and we don't want to talk because you're this denomination. But you call it a good neighbor, we call it community engagement,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And essential is almost the same thing.
Yeah.
And so what we want to try to do is say that, okay, in order for you as a police officer able to properly police your community, you have to know them, right? And so we're saying that oftentimes the police don't live in the neighborhood for which they police, so they don't know the kids, the families and stuff. So when I grew up, the police officer lived in the neighborhood and they knew the kids.
Right.
So that makes a whole big difference. And so we see the same thing in perhaps in the county line and the cities when they make decisions and stuff.
Yeah.
They're making these decisions how they see the point of view. But if they had relationships with the individuals who they are voting for or doing things for, then the outcomes would be totally different. And so what you're saying by being a good neighbor, I think that it would change how we view bills and stuff that we do.
Yes.
Then the people best interests will totally come forward.
Absolutely.
And so it starts with each one of us. And I say that try to get out of your comfort zone. And that's what it's about. Getting out. And
Yeah.
really all this is about getting out your comfort zone and increasing your circle or your network
Right.
of friends, or diversify your friends. And we just live in the Midwest where we see that a lot of individuals I know have the same friends since preschool.
Right.
Right. They might add one. They might add one.
It's hard to grow that circle sometimes, right?
It's hard to get in that circle. But in order for us to be effective as a community and for us to break down the racial divide and everything like that, we have to begin to socialize ourselves and begin to talk to other people who don't look like us.
Absolutely. Part of what we are engaging with is also the idea that being a good neighbor and loving our neighbors isn't a hero complex, right? It's not any of us coming in, swooping in to save the day, to be the person, but being an authentic, vulnerable relationship where we are also giving something of ourselves to be loved and to be cared, to recognize our own need for community. And so are there ways that you feel like maybe CERT is helping to embody being present with people in ways that are mutual, to be a presence, but also to invite people to know you and to know the folks who are part of that? Do you think that's an important part of it?
I think that's an important part of it because especially they see us as one of them.
Right.
Right. And I always use examples of Jesus when they came to get Jesus at, in the Garden of Gethsemane, that he wasn't they couldn't identify him, right? Unless Judas showed him by a kiss. That means that he looks just like the people he was serving. Right. And I always say that if you're a pastor, you should smell like sheep.
Oh, that's
right.
great. Yeah.
Because you've been around them enough. And so our concept is that they feel that we are a part of them.
Yeah.
We enter into your world and you become the expert.
Right.
And so we don't come to help, we come to empower.
Yeah.
And so in turn that some of them become CERT members so they can give back.
Yeah.
And so we're not here, at least in this this complex here to stay here,
Yeah.
to give them the skills that they need, because at the end of the day, I can go home, but they still have to live here. But if I give them the tools and everything that they need, then they'll be much more successful.
Yeah.
And so we're building a culture of loving your neighbors here.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
And it starts with one person at a time.
Yes.
And so we try to reach one person at a time, one apartment at a time, and then share that love. And part of that, you're telling them that you got to give your time, your talent, and your treasure.
That sounds familiar.
Yes. And teaching them that. And we're seeing that it's starting to work, because we went from like 6 volunteers to over 30 volunteers.
Wow.
And I think it become contagious.
Absolutely.
And I think that people want to give those 3 things. But where do I start at?
Yes.
And I think that CERT has been good at helping people find what their passion is.
Yes.
And you'll find out that by giving of yourself, emptying yourself, it helps fulfill yourself.
I feel like Jesus said something about that.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. The emptying and the giving is also something that fills you up to continue doing that work.
Yes.
Yeah. On that topic, are there any specific ways that you would want to highlight for our congregation that people can support your work, can be involved? What are some of the ways that people can join in and be a part of that?
Yes, I think there's several ways. We always look like for CERT ambassadors, and that is just getting the word out that what we do.
Yeah.
And letting other people know that there's volunteer opportunities out here, that we do a lot of up and coming community engagement events.
Great.
We're hoping that we can bring like VBS, instead of just doing VBS at your church, just do a VBS as an outreach.
Yeah.
A lot of those kids probably would never step foot inside of a congregation, but you can bring that same feeling out there, and then you'll get to meet different individuals, which you probably would never have met before. Yeah. So my whole objective is getting people out of their comfort zone. Yeah. Bring them to neighborhoods and different places which they don't know about. And I think that you alluded to and talked about it earlier. Well, if this is southeast of part of town, we hear all the time. If northeast, northwest, well, we don't really. So if it is a part of town, how do we make it a good part of town?
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so the thing is that you may have the resources or the means to be able to transform these neighborhoods by the gifts and talents that you have.
Absolutely. And putting yourself into a place. I mean, I think your organization is such an opportunity for people to find a way to connect with folks who may not live in the area where they live. The chance to have some training, have some support to sort of, if we feel maybe nervous or anxious about volunteering or being part of something, it sounds like some of what you're doing is also giving people the confidence to be good neighbors and to step out and to recognize that we all have this capacity to do that. And so this is a really important sort of on-ramp for that.
It is. And I think we make it a little easier.
Yeah.
so we don't say, I don't know where to start at.
Right.
Who are the people who are in need? And we make it easy. So we go, now, not everybody who's in CERT and not everybody that we serve are impoverished. So I think that we sometimes get that disclaimer.
Absolutely.
But whatever the need may be at, right?
Yes.
And that's where we go at. Who need us the most? And I know that sometimes it's easy to get volunteers when you can plug volunteers according to what their strategic places. So in order for us to continue to grow and continue to let this be a city that's safe and thriving, we need everybody to get out their silos and become a good neighbor.
Absolutely. Amen. Amen. And so as my final question in that spirit, tell me a little bit about how the way that your view of Rochester in our community maybe has changed in your work with CERT. Are there things that you've seen or things that you've been surprised by or things you would want other people to know about some of the places in our community that you've been working, or that we might have assumptions about, but there's more going on than some of the assumptions?
Yeah, I'll work with RPD.
Yeah.
I mean, just saying that, just spending time to get to know us and getting to know the neighborhoods that they're doing, like, I think in April 1st or somewhere there, getting that they're going to do like a roller skate outreach.
Yes.
And bring arcades and stuff.
Yeah.
Right? That would never happen if we haven't sat down and said there's different ways that you can bring engagement, because we know that instead of having negative interactions with the community, now they see you having positive interactions, right?
Yeah.
I mean, things like that, the social lights, what you've seen downtown,
Yes.
right? From stuff that we did downtown by bringing food from basketball hoops, doing things outside of the box.
Absolutely.
And so we start seeing them start doing that thing. So I think it started to be contagious when they get, we, like I said earlier, we call community engagement, but it is basically love your neighbor, get to know your neighbor approach. So that means that they get more in depth and they're realizing that relationships is very important.
Absolutely.
And so I'm glad to see that movement, that those two entities. And
Yes.
so we're hoping that we can partner with other entities
Yes.
who may not at this point know how to build meaningful relationships or know how to do community engagement or outreach, that we can partner with them, put them in a situation where they can do it, and then continue to maybe partner with other organizations and so we can blanket the whole city with that mindset and that approach.
Yeah, that's an incredible image, and such a faithful one, I think, around the difference that one neighbor at a time can have across a whole community. So thank you so much, Andre. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for the opportunity.
It's so important and good to hear about CERT's work here in our community in Rochester, and are really, really grateful to hear about that and to lift it up as part of our Good Neighboring series. And so if you want to know more about CERT, you know now where to look and where to go and find out how you can plug into that. But thank you so much for your time and for the incredible work and ministry and neighboring, the good neighboring that you all are doing here in Rochester.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for tuning in.